Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this wonderful... It's Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, the day after Super Tuesday, which is an American thing. And yeah, it happened. If you want updates on that, you could always watch the Majority Report. They talked about it. This is a Canadian channel. Anyway, welcome. So far in the Sandbox, we have Soul Life and Looney Tunes. Two of my favorite people, because you're always reliable and in the Sandbox. So, sorry for the break. Yeah, I had a bit of an unplanned break. I wasn't really planning on it, and then it just kind of happened. You see, Friday, when I was going to do my live show, I got distracted because I was starting on a video about Anna Kasparian. In particular, there was that segment on the PBD podcast that she was on when she was talking about trans and non-binary and the whole birthing people thing. And it's something that I have been wanting to go over in a video essay, but I just haven't gotten around to it. And then, of course, as I'm doing that, I realize, oh, I should add this, and then there's this clip from here, and then there's this clip, and I should watch this. And before you knew it, I was watching several debates of Anna with right-wingers to see if there was anything of worth to clip from it. And I tell you, watching Ben Shapiro at 2 speed is quite the thing. So while I was watching those, I was also working on updating my logo. You can't really see it that well here on this piece of paper. Let's see if I go to here, you can see the Left of the Box logo down there has been changed a bit. Let's see if I could probably just bring it up. If I go over here and you can't see what I'm doing, logo new box. There we go. And bring this over here, make that big. And then I do this. Ta-da, my new logo. Okay, so really the only thing I've kind of changed is the box here. I had Lot B on it because that was going to be the shorthand for my channel, which never really picked up. And it just kind of looked, I don't know, a little off, a little weary. And I wanted a shorter kind of tagline. So Canadian politics with sarcasm and sass is what stuck. I lessened the thickness of the stroke around of the, like, so tiny. It took me so long to do these updates because once I've changed this, the box, then I had to go through all of my files and change them for like OBS, which I use to live stream, to my editing program to update all of that. And I did all of that. And I updated my logos on YouTube and on Twitter. And then when I saw it on the computer like that, I'm like, this part here needs to be lighter than what I had. So then I had to lighten this and redo everything all over again. So I got super distracted doing that, which meant I also had to go to the printers to get this printed off, even though you can't really see it. Anyway. Looney Tunes 9000. Anna went on something called the Ice Coffee House and Trash Lance of the Service and Benny. Yes, I know. That's one of the videos that I ended up watching because as I was gathering information, Benny had tweeted out a little clip from that podcast show. And so I ended up watching all of that at 2 speed as well so that I could find little tidbits of information. And sometimes it's just super frustrating. I remember a part of a conversation from God knows when, and I'm like, I really need that clip. somehow I need that clip. And so part of my research was just going back and watching old videos of things I knew I saved somewhere to find 5 seconds worth of dialogue. Ooh, I wish there was a way to like word search audio on YouTube. I dread that day and I look forward to that day. Oh, Monope and MIDI doctors have also jumped in the sandbox. Transport duty at hospital today, says MIDI doctors. Danny. Wait, Anna K is on a moment again. Yeah, she hasn't let go of people getting mad at her because she doesn't want to be called a birthing person, which nobody was mad at her for that. But she hasn't let go of the idea of we're not trying to replace the word woman. And the fact that she was once asked about that in a medical setting and how upsetting it was. And there was forms with that term on it and just how off-put she was by that. And all I could think is like, if any trans person or me, being referred to as a woman would, I'm not, if we were to react the same way that she reacts to that one slight, she would freak out on us. If we were to have that same level of grudge, of not letting go, of constantly crying about it. Oh, yeah. So I'm going to be going over some stuff. So I will be going over the PBD podcast, but now it's kind of entwined in other things. And so I've had to make notes and stuff. So the video is still a ways from being even close to being done. But I think it'll be a very interesting video when I do get it done. But that took up a lot of my time. And then Sunday, I totally meant to do a live stream. But then I started doing chores because there's something about the weather in spring. There's just this one day that will hit. And it's like perfect weather and I'll have all my windows open and I get this bug to clean. And I need to clean when that happens. And when I get that urge, I need to take advantage of it because I'm not exactly a tidy person at home. Like I do all the basics regularly, the dishes, the cat litter, the laundry and stuff, and begrudgingly get that done and stuff. So my place isn't gross, but it's very disorganized and dusty. So whenever I get that urge to do a more thorough cleaning, I need to take advantage of it. And then I thought, okay, maybe I've done enough. And then I came in here and I sat down and I thought maybe I could do it. And then I saw that I had torn down this sign because I was going to replace it. And I hadn't cut this out yet. And I was like, screw it. I'm just going to keep on with chores. I wish there was an easier way of letting people know when I'm not going to be on versus when I will be on. I always tweet it out and I always post it to Blue Sky, but I know a lot of you don't actually are on those platforms. So in the chat, let me know what would be the best way of notifying people if I'm not going to be live on a certain day. Because that would be helpful if I knew the best way to communicate with you guys. See, this is me understanding communication. This is a two-way thing with us here. So, anyway, yes, I called into the majority report. Yep, I managed. I actually did it. Wow. Okay. Because last week, got a couple Canadian callers into the show, and I made a whole big deal about it because Sam shouted me out, which was super thrilling. He remembered my name. So I called in, and I got through with a little help from somebody behind the scenes. And for a solid 5 minutes, I was allowed to just talk, which is kind of wild because they usually interrupt people and stuff. And I still haven't been able to watch that video with the audio on because I can't stand calling in. I hate it. I hate calling into the show so much. But then I go and I rewatch it with the audio off just to see facial reactions to try to gauge where they're at with me and stuff. Um, Emma looked pleasantly surprised when I said that it was Sandy from Ontario, and lots of people in the comment section being left of the box, yay! But it was, yeah, it was really nice to finally get through and just kind of wrap things up. I feel so bad for the person who got picked up on right after me, because in my 5 minutes, I managed to squish in issues about housing, disabilities, the student crisis, immigration, racism, all of that in like this 5 minute span. I was able to squish that all together, nice and complete. And then the next person after me was somebody from Edmonton who also wanted to talk about housing, and Emma and Sam were just not, not, ah. Because the person before me was talking about housing, but in America, which is why I ended up adding in the part about housing here in Canada. Anyway, I got through. It was kind of nice. I have, I've clipped it. I don't know if I'm going to post it or anything. Looney Tunes 9000 says, "Aw, damn it, I missed it. You can go back to yesterday's show and see it. It's only about 5 minutes long. I think if you go to the 1:30 mark, roughly, you'll find it. Because I was the second caller in. So some people saying community posts on YouTube is best for chats. Looney Tunes 9000 says that I can let them know on Discord. Yeah, I can try with community notes, just posting to my YouTube channel, because the goal is to do a show Wednesday, Friday, and Sundays at 6 p.m. But it's hard for me to stay on a schedule like that when I just get wound up with other things. Like, it'd be a lot easier if I was working with other people, because then it kind of forces me to focus, but I can get way distracted too easy when I'm just off about other things and struggling to do other things. And, well, all of this is on me. Like, I'm doing everything you see, all the graphics, everything. So it's just a lot of work. So if I was working with a team, it'd be a lot different. But yeah. So I just kind of wanted to go over some fun stuff. So I covered those 2 calls last Wednesday that were into the majority report when I got the shout out, which I was really thrilled about. So I decided to address those on my show. And I've clipped them so you can go and see them on my YouTube channel. But here we have this lovely expression here. I'm not sure why nobody has just made like a GIF gallery of me from my YouTube page, because I have a lot of interesting face expressions and reactions and stuff. And I have not come across a single GIF of my face. But I wanted to scroll down here. So it looks like the person who had called into the show, and this was about the college crisis, saw my clip as well. And so they say, "Hi, I'm Dan from Windsor, the guy who called in earlier. Just wanted to clear up a few things." And I also feel it's important that if the person that I'm making the video about, the caller into the show, leaves a comment, to at least look at it. And I'm just going to take in good faith that this is the person who called in, because it's very easy and simple for somebody to say, "I was the caller," and then I have no idea. But I trust this is the actual person who had called into the majority report about this. And Dan says, "I'm not usually watching Majority Report live. I tend to listen in the mornings at work. But today I had it streaming while I was at my desk. I've been gathering info on the international student situation, focusing on how these students are being used for cheap labor and to boost real estate values. It's pretty messed up how they're treated like commodities in a scam. Decided to call in today without my notes because I felt like I knew enough about the topic. Got a bit nervous when Sam picked up my call, and I'm kind of surprised I managed to stay on as long as I did." I understand. I still get so nervous calling into the majority report, and I can have all the notes in the world in front of me and then just totally blank on stuff. I don't, yeah, I've explained plenty of times why I still get nervous calling into the majority report, but that's so understandable. And so he says, I do watch your videos, but unfortunately I can't watch each one and I can't watch streams. I enjoy your content and please keep covering Canadian issues. Well, thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate it. And yeah, I make Canadian content. And then I also made a video about the rise of racism. And from the looks of it, the person who called into the majority report about that, there's another little interesting gify face of mine, says, I called in and didn't know about you. I subscribed. The hate is crazy these days. So thank you for subscribing to my channel, caller. That I don't know your at name, how to say that or anything. But yeah, like the goal of my channel is more Canadian news, more progressive news. And I know sometimes people, like in both the phone calls into the majority report, mention like David Dole and Lance from the Serfs and how they don't really cover Canadian issues. And I saw in the comments to some of the videos, some people kind of belying that, you know, like they should be doing it more and stuff. And no. I have a long video about the pressures put onto content creators. And there's nothing wrong with them wanting to make money from their channels. I would like to make money from my channel, but it's trying to find that balance of making money and also covering the topics that mean something to us. And I've heard David explain plenty of times that American politics is where his interest lies. And he does cover Canadian stories from time to time and does a great job of it. And Lance and the Serfs, they seem to cover a lot of, I don't know what the term is, like the pop culture of the politics, pop politics, you know, like the debates and things of that sort. And um, but he also covers Canadian stories, and it's great when they do. So the only thing is that my channel is going to be more of a focus on Canadian issues, but then still cover other things like the video essay I'm working on with Anna Kasparian. That will most likely bring in a lot of views, but and it's not anything to do with Canada in particular. So it's all a mix, and it's important for content creators to do things we like because this takes a lot out of us. And if we were constantly just covering things that brought us down, that we weren't interested in, we wouldn't be able to keep this up. So yeah, it just so happens that Canadian politics and issues here is a passion that I care about a lot. So that's why I tend to cover these. So let's check the Sandbox and then we'll get into some news. I actually got some stuff. I had to go back. Part of the problem when I skip days that I'm supposed to be live streaming, I miss so much and there's so much I want to cover. But oddly enough, a lot of what I want to cover is kind of entwined into just a couple stories. So we'll see how that goes. So, yeah, somebody else saying community notes is probably a good way to do that. Himmat Gretwall, sorry. I need to have like a disclaimer on my screen at all times. I'm horrible with names, pronouncing them, figuring out how they're pronounced, that sort of thing. And they say, thank you for your work. And thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And I don't think I've seen you in the Sandbox before, so welcome. Danny, I think YouTube has a thing where you can send out pre-notifications for videos going live, and I think also live streaming. I do have the thing saying that it's going to be going live at a certain point, and I usually try that around 4:30 to have that notification go out. And I seem to be pretty consistent with that. So, so I guess if you don't, but I might not have time to get that all set up before I do a live stream, so that's not a surefire way of knowing if I'm going to be live streaming that night or not. The anti-corporatist. Hey fam, doing stuff, primarily applying for jobs, so going to be mostly lurking, but love to you all. Well, good luck applying to those jobs. Know how difficult it can be. Uh, Himmet is the caller, I guess. I called in and looking at your videos now. Politics is also part of my work. Keep up the great work. Uh, Hi Muth. Okay, Hi Muth is how you pronounce their name. Well, hello, Hamath. I think I said that. I think I said that right. I'm sorry. I'm just names. Huh. Uh, yeah, there's so much happening in this country. And like I said, like even when the first bunch of things I'm going to cover are issues around what's happening in Gaza, but they are Canadian centric in a sense of what are our Canadian politicians doing, what are our policies happening over there, the protests and the rallies happening here. And I tried to, again, I tried to add the Canada tinge to it because none of the other channels will be covering it the same way. Like they might bring it up, but that's not their focus. And if you watch any leftist YouTubers, you know what's happening over in Gaza is just so horrific. So horrific. So I'm always trying to find a different way of approaching some of the same stories, but again, want to keep it Canadian. So, and unfortunately, I still get a lot of my sources from the Twitter. It's easy for me. It just comes kind of naturally to me, I guess, to go there for sources because then I get linked to articles and find out more information, and you're talking with people with lived experiences in some situations. Anyway, we'll get to a lot of that. So let's go to here. So from Muhammad, we are now at the surreal stage of this war where Joe Biden, supported by the likes of our own Justin Trudeau, Melanie Joly, and Ahmed Hassan, are dropping food on 2 million people. The world's greatest power is dropping food with parachutes on human beings while the beacon of democracy and the world's most moral army, led by the thug Netanyahu, watches on and kills people daily. Makes sense. Yes. In the coming days, the United States will carry out airdrops of aid to Gaza, redouble our efforts to open a maritime corridor and expand deliveries by land. The aid flowing into Gaza is nowhere near enough. We need to do more, and the United States will do more. Well, there is a lot more the United States could be doing. If one nation could really apply that pressure, the United States has that ability. Simply defunding Canada. We can stop defunding the Israeli government, stop sending them weapons. But the idea of us dropping parachutes of food to starving people and the amount that was dropped, because Owen Jones, who has been covering this in great detail and is a wonderful follow on Twitter and his YouTube channel, saying this is perverse. The U.S. refuses to use its huge leverage to force Israel to get aid into starving Gaza, hands Israel vast supplies of weapons to slaughter Palestinians, and then thinks dropping enough food to give 1.72% of the population a single meal for one day compensates. Yes, the United States dropped 38,000 meals into Gaza. There's over 2 million people there. Pretty much all of them are on the brink of starvation. Some have actually started to starve to death. And they're doing airdrops and patting themselves on the back for that. That is grotesque. When there is so much more our countries could be doing, and this is coming from a countries, again, that defunded UNRWA, the way to get aid into the countries the best way, because UNRWA has the infrastructure in place to get it done. And what do? We unfund them as soon as Israel gives us any excuse to do it by saying, oh, yeah, they're 12 of the thousands of members of theirs, just 12 of them might have participated with the October 7th attack, so we need to stop funding the entire organization. And then, of course, later on, that proved to be meritless. Like there was nothing, there was no evidence, nothing to back it up, of course. And it is just, it says so much about the United States, about Canada, that it's the band-aid solutions, the like, throwing a cup of water on a burning wildfire and thinking they've done good when it's a wildfire they created in the first place. It is just horrid. And I would imagine it is just, it's cruel to the people there, because you have so many people fighting over these few meals that were dropped. And how do you divvy that up? How do you divide that up? Who gets what? And pitting people against each other to try to grab food for their starving family and having enough for a meal. It's cruel that they would do this. Like they should be dropping so much more. There should be 2 million meal drops 3 times a day. But to do this and then pat themselves on the back like we're doing good is disgusting. Our countries are disgusting. And so we'll get a little bit more into some news, and this is connected. We'll get to it. So, pro-Palestinian protesters disrupt event in Toronto involving leaders of Canada and Italy. A dinner hosted by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in honor of his Italian counterpart had to be cancelled this evening after pro-Palestinian demonstrators blocked entrances to the venue where it was set to take place. Good work, protesters. That's what we want to see. We don't want these politicians out able to enjoy anything while this atrocity is going on that we could be doing something about. Trudeau's office confirmed neither he nor Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni were able to enter the Art Gallery of Ontario, which briefly went into lockdown as demonstrators shouting pro-Palestinian slogans packed the area where would-be guests were awaiting admission. They included International Development Minister Ahmed Hussein, who was unable to enter the gallery through the front entrance and walked 2 blocks while flanked by police and protesters chanting "shame, shame" before he ducked into a nearby police station. Now, there's a couple reasons why this particular event should be protested. One, Justin Trudeau is there. Ahmed is there, and he's the minister that helped shut down the funding to UNRWA, so that's huge, huge shame. But also, the Prime Minister of Italy, going out to a fancy dinner with her. The way our liberals treats fascists in this country is just astonishing. Standing ovations, fancy dinners. We want to work well with them, of course. Because let's get a little bit of information on who this person is. I had to look her up on here. So, from her Wikipedia page, a right-wing populist and nationalist, her political positions have been described as far-right. She describes herself as a Christian and a conservative, and she claims to defend God, fatherland, and family. She is opposed to euthanasia, same-sex marriage, and LGBT parenting, saying that nuclear families are exclusively headed by male-female pairs. Well, chances are her beliefs would prevent her from being, leader of a country. But, they like to cherry pick which ones of these, misogynistic, paternalistic ideologies that they take. Her discourse includes nationalism, rhetoric, and criticism of globalism. Meloni supports a naval blockade to halt immigration. And she has been accused of xenophobia. Oh, really? And Islamophobia. You don't say. Blockades to prevent people from coming into the country. A supporter of NATO, she maintains Eurosceptic views regarding the European Union, which she described as Euro realist, and was in favor of better relations with Russia before the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, after which she pledged to keep sending arms to Ukraine. Mulroney has expressed controversial views, such as 2020 when she praised the chief cabinet in Mussolini's Italian Socialist Republic, who produced racist propaganda and co-founded MSI. In 2023, Mulroney was the 4th on Forbes' list most powerful women in the world. Yeah, she's the type that we should be celebrating and going out to dinner with and having good relations with, and never call out and never say anything bad about, her rhetoric, her policies, who she is, even though they go against everything the Canadian government likes to claim to hold a value. The two prime ministers issued a joint statement saying their agreement will further deepen countries. They wanted to Canada-Italy roadmap for enhanced cooperation. Yes, let's cooperate with these fascist states. It's good practice for when the United States becomes a fascist state if we start working with other ones around the world to get that practice in, I guess. Apparently, the two got into a public spat last year after Trudeau criticized Italy's stance on LGBTQS+ issues in a meeting with Mulroney at the G7 Leaders Summit. He was reacting to her government's move to limit the recognition of parental rights to only the biological parents in families with same-sex parents. Mulroney later rejected the criticism, and said Trudeau had fallen victim to fake news. Fake witty Wikipedia page as well, I guess. Just another... I'm surprised Trump hasn't said more about her, because she's like the crypto-fascist, like completely the type of person one would imagine Trump would be interested in for some reason. I don't know what that reason would be at all, why Trump would be interested in her. Policy-wise and everything else. Yeah, it is just, this is the type of person who we celebrate. But the next thing I'm going to show you is a real tweet by an MP of the Canadian government. This is real. It's on, I'm on Twitter right now and it's up. So we'll just go here first. Pro-Hamas protesters who shut down Trudeau Mulroney Gala, Toronto Sun. So that's some really piss poor framing right there. But from Kevin Vong, first they came for the Jews. Yesterday they came for the Italians. Who will be next? History has shown us that what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. We must stand together, united against hate, to ensure history does not repeat itself. You know what? In both of these cases, it has nothing to do with Jewish people, it has nothing to do with Italians. It has everything to do with the fascist elements within those groups. And that is what the pro-Palestinian people are protesting. Wow, that was a lot of alliteration right there. Pro-Palestinian people protesting. There we go. Oh my God. Yeah, this lovely MP right here for Spadina, Fort York. And I always find it interesting how conservatives never put that in their bio. That, he puts that he's an MP, but not all that often do they actually say, which party they're for. And I would think you'd be so proud of it. You would plaster that all over your bio so that it's very clear when anyone clicks on you which party you're an MP for. What a ridiculous tweet. My God. First they came for the Jews. Yesterday they came for the Italians. Yeah. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Poor framing. But here is the quite the walk of shame tonight for UNRWA defunding minister. And that's And that is how it's done. No one's being violent. Nobody is getting in his face, but they're being loud. They're yelling shame at him. They're all recording him as he's doing this, saying basically he's responsible for, cutting off funding to the one organization able to help the starving people in Gaza. More of this. Every time they go out to eat at a fancy restaurant, while their choices are helping to starve the people in Gaza, they deserve this kind of reception. Absolutely. Just get in their face. Just get in their face. Don't be violent, but make them so uncomfortable they can't go out in public. Oh. So let's but after this, before we get to the sandbox, after this, there's the thing is that it's kind of working, these protests. This article here from CBC News. Let me make that bigger. There we go. Canadian government will resume funding to United Nations Relief Agency for Palestinians, says a source. Ottawa paused funding after Israeli government alleged organization staff were connected to Hamas attack. Don't get your hopes up quite yet. We'll get into it. So we read the article, the headline here, will resume. Until it says it has resumed, yeah. Two very different things. So this article headline is saying it will resume, not that it has resumed. The federal government is resuming funding. Again, until that is past tense, don't take it as anything other than like a massive grain of salt. Funding to UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Agency for Palestinians, in addition to going ahead with a scheduled payment in April of $25 million, Canada's International Development Minister also intends to announce new funding, according to a senior government official. The Canadian government announced a pause in funding in January after Israel alleged that 12 employees of UNRWA were involved in some capacity in the October 7th attacks on Israel by Hamas and the affiliated group Islamic Jihad. Okay, no, we paused funding after Israel said, tisk, look at these bad people, the same day the ICJ said that there was plausible belief that Israel was committing a genocide. And that should have probably also been, the same day, because, paused funding in January, the same day the ICJ had its ruling. You could have added that into their CBC News, I'm just saying, for fuller context. UNRWA moved quickly to fire the 12 staff members on January 26 as soon as Israel made its allegations. The government source says Canadian officials have now seen a copy of the interim report by the United Nations examining the allegations. Based on that information, the Canadian government is comfortable resuming funding, the source says. Oh, so now you've reviewed some evidence to be like, I guess this didn't happen the way that Israel is saying, so we can resume that instead of, keeping the funding going to a population that is starving and traumatized and being bombed and are out of medical supplies. So instead of continuing that while you're investigating, you just simply cut off the funding until you saw this and said, yeah, I guess I guess Israel painted a picture that wasn't quite, what the actual truth was. Shocking. Who could have seen that coming? CBC News is not naming the source because they are not authorized to speak publicly about the decision. So again, until this is a past tense statement of funding UNRWA, has resumed funding UNRWA, keep in mind that, things like this can happen. Minister Hussen has cancelled his press conference where he was reportedly going to announce the resumption of Canada's funding to UNRWA. Event cancelled. Minister Hussen to hold so March 5th, the Honorable Ahmed Hussen, Minister of International Development, will hold a press conference to announce additional humanitarian assistance for Gaza. Minister Hussen, who will be accompanied by Bob Ray, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Canada to the United Nations, New York, blah, blah, blah. Cancelled. So, this headline here, while it's hopeful, is not actually the case yet. But pressure from this will most likely make this into past tense. It's important that we keep the pressure on, that we actually get the government to hear us on this, because it's absolutely unacceptable what this government is doing to help aid the genocide, Israel's genocide of the people in Gaza, to continue to sell them weapons, to continue to fund them, to continue to look the other way, to continue to not publicly call them out. Because, again, there's been that statement that was released, a joint statement between Canada, Australia, and New Zealand saying, a ceasefire would be nice. But they didn't actually directly call for a ceasefire in that statement. They just basically said, yes, if it were to happen, we'd go along with it, and we think it probably should happen. But they never directly called Israel to do a ceasefire. So we have more news along these lines, but before we get to that, just going to quickly check in with the Sandbox. Hamath, free the children of Gaza. Yeah, it's just so much. And on the phone today when I was talking to Sam, when I was talking to Sam Cedar. Oh, I'm a child sometimes. So when I was on the phone professionally talking to Sam Cedar and not freaking out whatsoever, I was confidently able to relay some information. And that is, again, just looking at the way that the liberals in this country like to tokenize what they do. So there was those big headlines 5 years ago or so of the 25,000 Syrian refugees that would be resettled in this country. And that's now up to 75,000. And that's a good headline. But they do that without any, you don't see the follow-up. So the people who come over here aren't supported the way that they really should be. I have a very, very dear friend who is one of these Syrian refugees who came over in the first kind of wave of Syrian refugees with her family. And she knew no English when she came over here, because refugees, they aren't planning on moving. So they don't necessarily know the language of the countries they end up in. She had 5 children at the time. It's now up to 8. And she's here with her husband and those kids. The rest of her family is still over in Syria and Turkey. She lost over 20 family members in the earthquake that hit that region a few years ago. She now has 8 children. 3 of them her mother has never met. She can't get her family over here to help support her, to help build her community. And so the Trudeau government loves bragging about all the people that they brought over here, but they don't mention the quality of life that they're providing. They don't mention the broken community that they're now a part of, because she has very little in the way of support. I met her through a volunteer program of tutoring English to newcomers, and we developed a very strong friendship through that. You know, she's even referred to me as her sister, which just makes my heart melt. And to see her struggling the way that she does, knowing there's almost no chance of her being able to bring her mother and her brother over here, that she's struggling to raise these children while dealing with some really severe health conditions. It's heartbreaking. And then you have the Ukrainian refugees, the temporary emergency visas. Nearly 1 million were approved. Over 200,000 have been, actually, people have taken it up on that. So over 200,000 Ukrainians have come over in this program. And there's no cap to that number either. There's caps to the numbers from like the Syrians, and there is a cap to the number of people from Gaza, because this country again likes to say, well, we're going to bring over some people from Gaza. 1,000. Oh, but they're going to be flexible with that number. Yeah. So far, none of them have made it over. Why? Well, the restrictions are kind of difficult to meet right now, because first, you need to have family or a permanent resident over here who's able to financially support them for at least 1 year. Then the people in Gaza need to somehow get to the office to apply for this program. They need to go through biometrics testing. They need to supply their employment history since they were 16, including supervisors and stuff. So just know that if you're ever fleeing a genocide, take a resume with you and make sure you have lots and lots of references, so that when the time comes, hopefully they can contact somebody who's still alive to verify you are who you are. You know, they also have to explain all their scars, all their injuries. They also have to pay the border fee, the bribe, to get into Egypt. They have to go through all of this in the situation that they're in. Instead of just accepting them as refugees, Canada is still suspicious that they might be part of Hamas, and they don't want to be bringing over anyone from Hamas. Just ridiculous that, like, no wonder nobody's been able to take them up on that offer. And there are Canadian citizens that are trapped in Gaza who can't make their way out. But it's the headlines that the Liberals are after. Just really, really frustrating, this government. MIDI doctors, airdrops are less than 1 lorry. That's a European thing, isn't it? A lorry? That's it, I imagine. Like, I imagine that there are some soup kitchens and stuff that actually supply that number of meals throughout a month or something of that sort, depending on where they are. Well, okay, that's a bit much for one soup kitchen, but 38,000 meals dropped into over 2 million people. Just Hymouth NDP needs to find its voice over Gaza. Some of them are working on it. There are a couple people within the federal NDP that are being very vocal, and we're actually going to get to a couple of them in a moment. I just wish that they had more power, and I wish that Jagmeet Singh was being a little bit more vocal about it, because he is the leader of the NDP after all. Lords of Darkness, Biden equals genocide. He should be put in prison as well as any politician that has continued to help give money to Israel. I'm all for charging politicians with war crimes when war crimes have been committed. So yeah, charge them all. You know, they're all responsible for this. Oops. Looney Tunes 9000 saying sometimes you can't trust Wikipedia. I know sometimes it is here and there and everywhere with Wikipedia, but you know, everything you get online you have to take with a grain of salt these days. All information is like, even the news articles I go over aren't necessarily accurate. A lot of them are very biased, as I just showed with the CBC news article. Yeah. To get unbiased, accurate, factual information is it's such a rarity these days. That's why it's usually best to just hear from people on the ground, people who are living the events. Let's see. Looney Tunes 9,000, 75,000. Yes, since the beginning of the war in Syria. So it's over many, many years at this point. But it has gotten up to that for the Syrian refugees. And when it first happened, Justin Trudeau had made this pledge to bring over 25,000 by the end of like 2015. And he did do that. But as I just explained, the follow-up isn't necessarily there. Vanessa Malandano, Mexicans now required visas. Well, fuck Trudeau. I saw something on that. I haven't actually looked into it yet. Oh, Danny, lorries are semi-trucks. Ah, okay, semi-trucks. Dark Witch, I've been watching the ICJ hearing and the information presented has been informative, yes. Anyway, let's get back to what has been happening. So an arrest has been made at a pro-Palestinian demonstration near Thornhill Synagogue. Reading that, you might think, so they arrested somebody unruly, some pro-Palestinian Hamas supporter that was unruly in the crowd, and that's, you know, who knows? But they're near a synagogue. That's horrible. Agent NDN points out, you mean this Zionist using a nail gun to threaten protesters, calling for an end to genocide? Yes, that is the person who was arrested, was somebody wielding a nail gun, attacking Palestinians. Nobody was injured, thankfully. But he did shoot it a couple times. So Zionist terrorists, genociders like Anthony Housefather will be silent. So Zionist with nail gun attempts to shoot pro-Palestinian protesters.
Call the cops!
Fucking coward.
Off the road! Off the road!
But like I said, luckily nobody was injured in that. And that it was only a nail gun because Canada, you know, United States, it might have actually been like something a little bit more disturbing. And so David Dole, the Rational National, is also replying to this headline by CP24 saying, arrest made at pro-Palestinian demonstration. That guy was arrested, was threatening peaceful demonstrators with a nail gun. The vague CP24 headline implies otherwise. Yes. But here is an article from City News Man, 27, charged after threatening pro-Palestinian demonstrators with a nail gun in Thornhill. So we do have news sources capable of making a headline that has context in it, that isn't so biased sounding. A 27-year-old man is in custody following an altercation at a demonstration between pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian supporters in Thornhill on Sunday morning. Police in York Region say more than 100 people had gathered in the area of Clark Avenue, West and South Promenade, just with... Okay, we don't need to know that. Several witnesses told the police that the man had stopped his vehicle near pro-Palestinian demonstrators and began shouting obscenities at them. According to the police, he became confrontational with 3 of the protesters. One of the victims claimed the man discharged a nail gun that he was carrying. And so I believe he was saying death to Palestinians. That was some of the obscenities that he was shouting. A video that has been shared across social media shows a man holding a nail gun and threatening several others around him. Police said no injuries were reported. So the person has been charged with 2 counts of assault, possessing weapons, dangerous to the public, assault with a weapon, and mischief. And Samira is saying 24 hours now since the heinous crime in Vaughan. No condemnation statement from any Canadian officials. Continues to include the including from the mayors of Vaughan. So the reason why this is so like it's grating for so many reasons, but not too long ago I covered another story of a right after Israel decided to bomb the Rafah refugee camp in Gaza, there was a massive protest in Toronto that went from the Israeli consulate to the American consulate, I believe. And on the path, let me just go back here. On the path was Mount Sinai Hospital, a hospital with a Jewish name that was Jewish founded, but is a hospital here in Canada. And people were passing by it. And there was one person dressed up as a Spider-Man, and apparently he's quite he shows up to a lot of these kind of protests and rallies, and he climbs pretty much anything he can because he's dressed up like Spider-Man. That's kind of what they do. And that included some scaffolding at Mount Sinai Hospital. The outrage from politicians, the accusations, the flat out lies based on this protest. They were walking by the hospital, but many of them said that they were infiltrating the hospital and harassing Jewish doctors and patients, which never happened. Saying that they targeted that hospital, which wasn't the case. That somebody had the audacity to climb on the scaffolding, who also happened to be dressed up as Spider-Man and was climbing up several things along the route. But just the sheer indignation, the outrage that politicians showed. And yet, here is a Zionist with a nail gun shouting Palestinians should die, shooting the nail gun at them, and they say nothing. Those same people that were so outraged at the Palestinian Spider-Man have said nothing about this. I wonder why that is. And as far as I know, the tweets from all those leaders are still up. You can go back to my video and check and see if like Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, Mayor Olivia Chow, if they still have up their comments of just the sheer outrage that protesters targeted this hospital and that somebody was climbing up on stuff. But here we have somebody actively attacking pro-Palestinian protesters, and none of those same politicians are calling it out, saying that this shouldn't happen. One politician has, sort of. From Matthew Green, I am appalled by the hateful and violent actions of this extremist in Thornhill. Peaceful protest is a right that must be protected. The use of political violence and growing anti-Palestinian racism to intimidate and target demonstrators is a grave injustice. That wasn't so difficult to put together. I'm not entirely sure why, Jagmeet Singh hasn't said anything, or Justin Trudeau, because they were sure vocal about the other one. So he is one official. I haven't seen any other officials, government officials, say anything about this protest. So Matthew Green was quote tweeting, "This was fast becoming clear is that the constant rush to misrepresent pro-Palestinian protests as threatening is both wrong and dangerous, as are attempts to obscure the facts around why peaceful protests are happening. This is creating more division that are leading to violence and have even resulted in various instances of death threats against demonstrators. Will there be any condemnation of this latest hate crime involving a man making threats against pro-Palestinian protesters with a nail gun? Double standards are not only unjustifiable, they are undermining social cohesion and inclusion." So Matthew Green has actually spoken up. So that's good at least, but still waiting. Justin, Jagmeet, so vocal about the other one. Haven't said anything about this. Doug Ford, are you going to say anything? No, they all unite behind calling out pro-Palestinian protesters for perceived slights, but, Zionist, threatening people with an actual weapon, get silence. So here is another tweet from Matthew Green saying, "It is unconscionable that the state of Israel actively engages in the ethnic cleansing in Gaza. Any Canadian organization would sponsor events promoting illegal settlements in the West Bank, which is clearly illegal under international law. Shame on everyone involved." And so here we have Israel real estate seminars in the US and Canada selling West Bank settlement homes. Yeah, this is a thing going on right now, and part of the reason why there's so many pro-Palestinian protests around those synagogues happening right now, because these are happening, selling off of these settlement homes are happening in these synagogues. So they're not being targeted because they're a synagogue, they're being targeted because they're doing illegal activity in them. And so there was just a list of dates of when these were happening. And oh, look, Toronto and Montreal are on that list. And here's Matthew Green just saying, yeah, this is horrible. It is. So here we have a quick little video about somebody who was out protesting one of these events.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Rabbi David Mivasser. I'm an active member of Independent Jewish Voices Canada. And I'm here today outside a synagogue where they're selling properties built on land stolen from Palestinians. There's a real estate agency that's come here today to Toronto to sell properties built on stolen Palestinian land. It's kind of unbelievable that Canada permits this. It's clearly illegal. So
yeah, that Canada would permit homes being sold on stolen land. I'm not saying anything against this rabbi here. He knows, but there's so many Canadians that just like, oh, we don't see the problem with this. Selling these homes on stolen land. There's no problem. Like, what's the problem? Yeah, that's settler colonialism, Canadians for you. But this person is not one of those. I just want to make that clear.
We're here today to call that out, and God willing to make it stop. Yeah, hi.
Yes. So this is the reason why there was that protest outside of a synagogue that a man with a nail gun then decided to go and attack people. And just Bassem Youssef had tweeted this out. See how propaganda works: half truth, half truths, and bunch of lies. Yes, there are protests outside a synagogue, but they are not harassing worshippers who are going to the synagogue. They are protesting a real estate event inside the synagogue that is selling homes in illegal settlements in the West Bank. How do I know that? Because there is a video from that same angle for a Jewish person talking to the camera, talking about the real estate event, protesting it, and wondering how Canada allows selling illegal homes in illegal settlements. Try again. And he was quote tweeting this: breaking anti-Israel protests have gathered in front of a synagogue in Toronto to harass Jews attending their religious service. Looks like it is the way you told us, whoever that person is. So this person here is just flat out lying. That is not the case. They are protesting the selling of illegal homes from the West Bank. And just again, the framing that our media likes to put around it, or just ignoring it altogether, is quite the thing. Agent NDN found this fun little video here that we can watch. And so he tweeted out, man, that Natalia woman doesn't exactly inspire a lot of confidence, does she? And we'll get to her in here. So Gada had posted this: thank you CBC News for interviewing me and my comrade Chelsea from Jews Say No to Genocide regarding our opposition to Israeli colonial theft. So you'll see who this person that Agent NDM was talking about in a moment.
Thanks for joining us. New details are emerging tonight about a protest outside of Thornhill Synagogue this weekend. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators clashed with counter-protesters who say their actions were anti-Semitic, but those in attendance say the demonstration was organized to protest a real estate event marketing illegally occupied land in the West Bank. Tyler Cheese has the story.
A lot of my clients have expressed interest in moving to Israel, so I thought it was worthwhile for them to see, the real estate side of things going on there.
A real estate expo held at a synagogue in Thornhill became the scene of a heated protest yesterday.
I don't think it's appropriate to show up and have a protest and a rally outside a synagogue, outside a home for Jewish individuals with special needs, near a library with children, and the manner in which it went about was very antagonistic.
Yeah, I don't think it's appropriate to have these protests around all these vulnerable people. Okay, so here's the thing, Natalia. Then maybe not have an event where you're selling illegal homes being hosted in a synagogue, and then there wouldn't be that protest there, if that's what you're worried about. If that's the thing. Then try not having this event where you're selling illegal homes in a synagogue. Try doing that. Because I don't think it's appropriate to have this event in the first place.
Demonstrators say they gathered at the synagogue because they believe the real estate event was advertising properties for sale in the West Bank. The Canadian government does not recognize Israel's control over the region.
Now, on their website, they say that it's based in central Israel, but that's not true. According to international law, it is, on occupied land. It is based in the West Bank. If you look at other properties on their website, you will see a lot of them have undisclosed address.
Meanwhile, those involved in the real estate expo are pushing back against those allegations.
That is absolutely false. Absolutely 100% false.
There's just... I is she a drama student or something? Because she's just looking away and then looks at the camera. This is false. Absolutely 100% false.
I know the properties that were being sold, and it was not in disputed land.
Yeah. I want to make a serious statement, so during this interview on the news, I'm going to look directly at you as opposed to the person who's interviewing me.
One pro-Palestinian advocate we spoke with, who is also a realtor, says it's inappropriate to hold this kind of event in a synagogue in the first place.
Synagogues are holy places of worship. They should not be used to hold real estate events. I, as a realtor, would never, ever consider holding one of my real estate events in a synagogue.
But they say they weren't targeting the synagogue itself or Jewish residents of the neighborhood.
No matter where these events were, we would be there protesting. If there was a Russian Orthodox church that decided to hold an event to sell Ukrainian land, we would all be protesting there as well.
Yes, it's about protesting the event, not the place.
It's not a matter of where it is, it's a matter of what it is.
B'nai B'rith, a Jewish service organization, condemned yesterday's protest and called on Canadian law enforcement to prevent future demonstrations at Israeli real estate events. Similar events are scheduled to take place in Montreal tomorrow and in Thornhill on Thursday. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Meantime, a man who clashed with protesters during yesterday's demonstration in Thornhill is facing a number of charges. Police say they were called to the synagogue just before 10 a.m. yesterday after someone reported being assaulted. Witnesses told police a man stopped his vehicle near pro-Palestinian demonstrators and began swearing at them and then got into a confrontation with 3 protesters. One person told police the man discharged a nail gun. According to investigators, no one was hurt. The accused is a 27-year-old man from Vaughan. He's facing several charges, including assault and assault with a weapon.
Yeah. So, again, media is covering these stories if they cover them. Like, at least this is good. You know, how Global News here has actually covered this story. They've added a fair bit of context to it, and they gave, you know, people on both sides the opportunity to speak without weighting it, like without balancing, like without, oh, what's the word? Because they had the pro selling of illegal homes on to speak, which is good because she totally made an ass of herself and put her on air. I want to see her on air more so that people will know how horrible she is. And they also showed videos of the people who were protesting and heard their side as well. And they didn't just say it was a protest about nothing. They actually allowed the context to be added into the story. So that's a good thing. But as we've seen from some of these other media stories, that type of context can be lacking, especially when it comes to anything putting a spotlight on what Israel is doing. Also, this is an interesting update. I think the people are beginning to understand the power we have. From Nikki Ashton, she is another MP from the NDP who's also outspoken and one of the few NDP MPs that I wish would just take over the party already. She says, I welcome this lawsuit against the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Lawsuit, you say? Canada should not be in the business of selling any weapons to Israel in their destruction of Gaza. We need immediate international arms embargo on Israel now. So what is happening? You see here, this article is from the Star, and I don't like clicking on articles from the Star because they have limits as to how many articles from the Star you can read in a month. But I don't need to click on that because Al Jazeera has the full story here as well. Palestinian Canadians sue Foreign Minister Joly over arms export to Israel. Sending military goods to Israel during Gaza war violates Canada and international law, lawsuit argues. Palestinian Canadians and human rights lawyers are suing Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly over exports of military equipment to Israel, which they argue violates Canada's obligation under domestic and international law. Hell yeah, sue the hell out of them. The lawsuit filed on Tuesday asks a federal court to order the Canadian government to stop issuing export permits for military goods and technologies destined for Israel. Now, one thing the Canadian government will say is, well, the weapons we're selling Israel are non-lethal weapons, which just means they're the components to lethal weapons. So you put them together and then suddenly it's a lethal weapon. It is just a word play that the government wants to try to use to, you know, deny accountability for what they're doing. It also asks the courts to deem the insurance of such permits unlawful. We are seeking to hold Canada to its own standards and to its international legal obligations, said Henry Off, board member of Canadian Lawyer for International Human Rights. Claire Har, one of the groups involved in the case. We don't want the Canadian government to be contributing to the mass starvation and bombardment of Gaza. One way of cutting off Canada's contributions is by cutting off its military support to Israel. Off told Al Jazeera in a phone interview. Military exports to Israel have come under greater scrutiny since October 7th, when the Israeli military launched military offensive in the Gaza Strip that has now killed more than 30,000 Palestinians. Thousands of others are believed to be dead, buried under the rubble. We're never going to know the true amount. There's so many bodies that will never be accounted for. So many families that have been wiped out to the point that there's nobody to even left to report them missing. And I don't think like all of Gaza is going to become like an archaeological dig site where they start digging it up to see how many people are there, which is just so disturbing that we have so many people that have just been disappeared. And it's continuing. It needs to stop. But we'll never know the true number of how many people died from what the Israeli government is doing. So this organization wrote in an open letter to the Canadian government in late January, arguing Ottawa to immediately halt all exports due to concerns the weapons could be used in human rights violations against Palestinians in the coastal enclave. Canadian arms exports to Israel totaled more than $15 million in 2022, according to official figures. Citing government data, the Maple News website first reported in February that Canada authorized at least $20.9 million. Oh, okay, we're talking about different currencies here. So in 2022, it was 21.3 million Canadian. So in February, that Canada authorized at least 28.5 million Canadian in new military exports to Israel in the first 2 months of the Gaza war. So in all of 2022, we exported just over 21 million. And that was in an entire year. And in February, since the start of this, over 28 million. In just the first 2 months of the Gaza war. That report spurred widespread criticisms and calls to end exports. Last week, protesters rallied outside weapons companies' facilities in several cities across Canada, including Vancouver, Quebec City, and Scarborough. Canada's contempt for international Canadian law by approving a dramatic increase in military exports to Israel since the latter commenced its bombardment of Gaza compels us to seek legal action to hold Canada to account. Palestinian Canadian and one of the lawsuit applicants said in a statement. So I don't think we need to go over the whole article, but we know what's happening here. So good move. Sue them. Sue the hell out of them. Oh, let's go back to here. So it's frustrating how long it takes the pressure to actually build up into something, but that's the thing people need to be reminded of. It does work. It builds up. When we go on these protests, when we do these rallies, it might feel like nothing is being accomplished, but something is happening. We want to see it happen overnight. We want to be able to snap our fingers and have it done. Unfortunately, with the way the government works, it doesn't work that way. However, the ongoing continued pressure does work, and we need to keep at it. We need to keep making their lives uncomfortable. We need to keep pushing back. We need to keep calling them out, calling out the media that's being complicit. finding other ways of going after the government for, participating in war crimes. All of that. Oh, let's go to the Sandbox. Danny, what an honest headline for once? Mind blown. Yeah, it's surprising sometimes when those comes out. We're going, actually, in my next set of stories, we're going, funny little story about that. Let's see. Ooh, hopefully you can't hear that. My stomach made a weird noise. Marty, Bassem Youssef is cool. He is. Dark Witch, lady, I don't think it's appropriate to sell homes on stolen land. Yeah. Coffee is necessary now. Rebel HQ is nothing without you. Why, thank you. Speaking of coffee is necessary now. Yes, for those of you who don't know, I actually did make it through to the majority report. Yesterday, I got my call through, was able to speak for a solid 5 minutes without being interrupted, and I was kind of expecting to be interrupted, and it was weird that I wasn't. And I've looked at the video. I haven't listened and looked at the video. I've clipped it, and I'm trying to figure out, what did Sam and Emma think about my call? I still despise calling in there, but Emma actually looked very pleasantly surprised when I called in, which was nice. But a lot of people commenting that I'm sounding Canadian on the phone, and I don't know what they mean because I don't think I have an accent. But apparently I sound Canadian. I have no idea what you're talking about, eh? Like, I've heard Canadian accents, and I don't sound like, but, it's a big country. There's different accents across the country depending on where you're going. But I don't think my accent is all that different than, like, Sam and Emma and, like, the New York, like, not like Bronx or anything, New York, but just, like, standard flat accent. I wouldn't, I don't think I sound Canadian per se. Vanessa saying, I disagree. This is not good media. It's supposed to provide and report the facts. They cannot allow the realtor to just say, no, we don't sell homes in disputed land. Media has to verify those claims. It's better media in that it covered the context than a lot of our media has. But it would be nice, yes, to actually have somebody in the newsroom saying that, no, they're selling homes from the West Bank and that's illegal. But what they did at least do was allow other people, so the protesters, the people part of those organizations, to state that that is what was happening. So as far as media goes, that is good. Because most media wouldn't even do that. They would just kind of stick to what the realtor was saying and leave it at that. Which is just, again, it's so frustrating. But there are hits and misses with Canadian media. You have good headlines, you have bad headlines. And sometimes they're from the same organization. So it's hard to tell where a bias is sometimes, what to believe. Like, there's some outlets out there you just know to never believe anything they say, or to know that they're talking from a huge right-wing bias. But then there's other organizations out there where it's like you can never tell, and it'd be nice. It would just be so nice to have like a completely unbiased, let's talk the facts news organization. But of course, as soon as any news organization would do that, they'd be accused of being biased because the facts, when reported accurately, paints some really bad pictures of this country, of the right wing, of conservatives, of liberals. It's just, and the same organizations that own the government own the media, so they tend to work together, which is horrible. Trevor says nail gun guy should be charged with a hate crime. I don't rule out that's not going to happen. This just happened. He just got arrested, so it might take a little bit before that gets announced, but it wouldn't surprise me if that gets upgraded to hate crime because it seemed to be clearly was. So that story I think is still developing. But hopefully, because yeah, it plainly was a hate crime. Okay, let's see. Where are we? Now, I am going to do my fun thing to show my Canadian. Well, I made this and then I forget to actually use this when I go to start Canadian news. But you know, I really like this, so you guys get to enjoy it too.
Today in Canadian news.
Yes, today in Canada news, only this wasn't today. I'm a bit behind because I took a couple days off. But apparently, former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney is dead. This is my heart not breaking. Details released on state funeral for former Prime Minister Mulroney. A state funeral for Prime Minister Brian Mulroney will be held on March 23rd in Montreal. Mulroney died February 29th at a Florida hospital following a recent fall at his Palm Beach home. He was 84. Retired to where it was warm and conservative. Parliamentarians are expected to pay tribute to Canada's 18th Prime Minister in the House of Commons when MPs return to Ottawa on March 18th after a 2-week break. Members of the public will be able to pay their respects to Mulroney in Ottawa. Yeah, I'm not going out of my way to pay any respects to him. I'm sorry, this is like super tiny for you guys. Let's make that big. There. No, that's a bit too big. There we go. So Mulroney led the Progressive Conservative Party in Canada, served nearly 9 years as Prime Minister between 1984 and 1993. He is remembered for being the leader to usher in new trade relations with the United States. NAFTA. First with the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement and later the first version of the North American Free Trade Agreement. He was also passionate about environmental causes, leading to a global treaty to protect the ozone layer and signing a pact with the US to reduce the pollution that caused acid rain. South Africa remembers him for helping champion an end to apartheid as a leader within the Commonwealth groups of nations. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky noted Mulroney was the first Western leader to recognize an independent Ukraine. State funerals are public events held to honor former governors, former governor generals and prime ministers, as well as current cabinet ministers. The prime minister can hold them for other eminent Canadians as well. Yes, let's honor him, shall we? Brian Mulroney was a piece of trash. Horrible prime minister. And he doesn't deserve the dignity of this article. It is what he did to this country is disgusting. But the fact that he was a politician that, used to be, they always love rehabilitating them into something that they weren't. But he was a horrible, horrible person, horrible prime minister, to the point that he actually had to step down before the vote of non-confidence went through. So here in Canada, you can kick out a prime minister if there's a vote of non-confidence. And when that happens and they say, we no longer have confidence, then they can kick him out. And since he knew this was coming, he stepped down before that happened so that he wouldn't be completely disgraced with that. Funny let's see. Didn't say anything about that in this article, that, you know, he had to step down because he was such a horrible prime minister. But speaking of those headlines I was mentioning, you know, being accurate and stuff like that, this one here. So, Brian Mulroney, one of Canada's most divisive prime ministers, dead at 84, says the Globe and Mail. The Globe and Mail had to do this. An automated tweet about former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney contained a headline that was not in line with our standards. It has now been deleted. So apparently this very accurate headline was written by AI. He was a very divisive prime minister. I don't see the fault in that. AI actually got it. They got this one. How dare they get this accurate to the point that Globe and Mail is like, ooh, that sounds a little bit too accurate. Yeah. We need more of this. That was just nice. But to show a little bit of his past here. So Brian Mulroney's 1984 election was one of the largest landslide victories in Canadian federal politics, winning 50% of the popular vote and about 75% of the seats in the House of Commons. You know, winning 50% of the popular vote, that's pretty big. Considering that, you know, a lot of our governments only make it in with like 40% of the popular vote sometimes. I think Justin Trudeau squeaked in. What was it? Like, it was really shockingly low this last time, but then again, it's not a majority government either. So at one time, he was seen, like when he got into office, he was seen as like the shining light of what Canada would become, and he totally did bad stuff here. And we'll get into some of that. Because this is important to know. It's important to know our history, our politics, and things of that sort. So, I'm not going to read all of this. But we'll read a little bit of it. So, let's get to here. Mulroney's tenure as Prime Minister was marked by the introduction of major economic reforms such as the NAFTA, Goods and Service Tax, the GST, that was created to replace the manufacturer's sales tax, and privatization of 23 of 61 Crown corporations, including Air Canada and Petro-Canada. Yes, Air Canada used to be a Crown corporation and then it got privatized. It sold off a whole bunch of our Crown corporations that just made them so much worse. Mulroney sought Quebec's endorsement of the 1982 constitutional amendments by first introducing the Meek Lake Accord and then Charlottetown Accord. Nobody will know things about that. So both accords failed to be ratified. I can get more into those in a different point, the different accords and what they were meant to do and all that sort of stuff, but since they weren't ratified. But since they both failed and the Meek Lake Accords demise revived Quebec's separatism, leading to the rise of the Bloc Québécois. So, Brian Mulroney helped inspire the Bloc Québécois. In foreign policy, Mulroney strengthened Canada's ties with the United States and opposed the apartheid regime in South Africa, leading an effort within the Commonwealth to sanction the country. Mulroney's tenure was marked by the Air India Flight 182 bombing, the largest mass killing in Canadian history. Though his response to the attack came under criticism, Mulroney made environmental protections a priority by securing a treaty with the United States on acid rain, making Canada the first industrialized country to ratify the Convention on Biological Diversity. The unpopularity of the GST and the controversy surrounding its passage in the Senate, combined with the early 1990s recession, the collapse of the Charlottetown Accord, and growing Western alienation that triggered the rise of the Reform Party, that's quite the statement, caused a stark decline in Mulroney's popularity, which induced him to resign and hand over power to his cabinet to Kim Campbell in June 1993. And that, my friends, is how Canada got their only non-white, cisgendered, heterosexual male prime minister. Yes, Kim Campbell, a woman, was prime minister for less than a year because Brian Mulroney was so bad. And this is that glass cliff that people talk about. They knew they stood no chance of getting into power again. They knew their party was toast. And that's when they're like, well, we'll just let a woman be in the position when we completely take that fall. I've seen it a bunch of times with different things, but this was how Canada got our one and only non-cis white gendered male politician. The election later that year, the Progressive Conservatives were reduced from a majority government of 156 seats to 2. That is massive. With its support being eroded by the Bloc and Reform parties. In his retirement, I don't care about anything about that. So he was criticized for his role in the resurgence of Quebec nationalism and accused of corruption in the Airbus affair, a scandal that came to light only several years after he left office. But that doesn't really concisely kind of wrap up some of the things that he was known for. So this person here, Mulroney brought Canada into neoliberal era of privatizing industries, deregulating, cutting taxes, attacking labor, overseeing an incredible transfer of wealth to the rich. Many wealthy people liked Mulroney, so they're going to celebrate him and rehabilitate his image. We gotta make sure that never happens. Because Canada used to do a fair bit in building of socialized housing, and after Mulroney, that disappeared. Like, he destroyed that program. Like, absolutely destroyed it. So more from David here saying, so Mulroney's record, privatized 23 crown corporations, brought in the U.S.-Canada Free Trade Agreement, slashed taxes for corporations and rich, attacked social spending and public services, brought in regressive sales tax, took huge kickbacks. Literal briefcase full of money. Yeah. Horrible, horrible person. The lefty Canadian radical Tory also said Mulroney was the last prime minister to meet a climate change target. So that was good, I suppose. He's negotiated one of the worst pieces of trade legislation to hurt Canada's working class and privatize Petro-Canada. Today, most of our oil sands share are foreign owned. So, while he might have helped, he also really hurt. Really did a lot of damage to us. And Mulroney's NAFTA, which Jean Chrétien ran on improving, then signed as is, decimated manufacturing in Ontario. Canada is a dominantly services-based economy, and workers here compete with third world wages to survive. This helped keep wage growth down to 6% for 50 years. Yeah. Enjoy Henderson just pointing out, because here's Olivia's Chow's statement on his passing. Brian Mulroney leaves a legacy benefiting all of us. He championed, Mayor Olivia Chow is the mayor of Toronto, Canada's largest city. He championed the environment, campaigning to end acid rain and protect the ozone. He led efforts to oppose apartheid in South Africa and offered redress of the historical injustice of internment camps of Japanese Canadians, because, that also happened here and not just in the United States. I'm grateful for his contributions to our country. My condolences to the Mulroney family. No, I want to do that. And Joy Henderson just saying Brian Mulroney led efforts to end apartheid in South Africa. No, the fuck he did not, Olivia. Black folks did. Jesus fucking ball-headed gay Christ on a pogo stick. Yes. Not the best thing to kind of, take credit for there, Brian, to give that kind of credit to Brian Mulroney. But there's another thing. Another big thing that happened while he was in power. A lot of people don't necessarily know about. So Terrell Tailfeathers says, one of the things I will always remember about Brian Mulroney is this picture and that he sent just as many troops, if not more, to Oka than he did to the 1990 Gulf War. Qui? Qu'est-ce que c'est? What is this? The Oka crisis happened under his watch, and he sent military troops in to suppress a protest. That protest was Indigenous peoples not wanting their gravesite to be put under a golf course. They didn't want it to be paved over by a golf course. Yeah. Oops. What's this? So a little bit more about this. The Oka crisis. So I think if we go down, there is this 5-minute video about it. But yeah, basically it was a golf course expansion and they were fighting back against it and stuff, but we can listen to this.
I think one of the most important examples of current Indigenous resistance was the Oka crisis of 1990. The Mohawks of Ganasatagi, a small territory reserve near the township of Oka, were resisting the expansion of a golf course and a condominium setup that was going to infringe on some of the last remaining pines, wooded area that they used for their ceremonies. Lacrosse and part of their graveyard was contained in this area. So in 1989, 1990, they started campaigning to stop this. They organized protests. They had petitions. They went to city council in Oka to try to stop this expansion, and the city was just arrogant and just would not listen to the people. They began a blockade of a small dirt road in the pines in Ganasatagi, and they maintained this little blockade for a few months. The township of Oka tried to get a court injunction to order its removal, and on July 11th, the Quebec Provincial Police sent in a large, heavily armed force of tactical officers armed with M16s and tear gas and that, and they went to dismantle this peaceful blockade.
So just try to understand. Canada sent in the military to try to get rid of a peaceful blockade. That might sound shocking, but they've done that more recently. Because you have what's happening in the Wet'suwet'en area in BC, where you have protesters trying to block an oil pipeline being put across their land, and Canada also sent in military to try to take them down. Canada has a very bad habit of doing this when it comes to Indigenous peoples trying to protect their land.
But by that time, warriors had rallied to the defense of this blockade and this struggle to protect the pines. And so behind the protesters, there were armed warriors. And when the police came in shooting tear gas, the warriors engaged them in a short firefight, and one of the police officers was shot and killed. After this shootout, the Quebec police retreated. They abandoned most of their vehicles, and this began a 77-day armed siege of the Mohawk community in Ganasatagi. That same morning, Mohawks in Ganawagi seized the Mercier Bridge, also with arms. They seized the Mercier Bridge to to place, as an act of solidarity, but also to place pressure on the Quebec government, because the Mercier Bridge was a vital commuter link into Montreal from the suburbs. And I mean, 100,000 people a day were using this bridge to get to work and to do their business in the city. And that this siege began. There was thousands of police deployed. Eventually, after a few 2 or 3 weeks, the Canadian armed forces were deployed. They deployed an entire brigade of 4,500 troops, complete with armored units, armored personnel carriers, tanks, helicopters, jets, artillery units, and naval forces as well, to contain these two communities of Kanesatake and Kahnawake. There was mass rioting by the white Quebecois Chateauguay, residents of Chateauguay, a nearby town, demanding that the military go in and crush this uprising. So it really inflamed a lot of the local racial tensions. Across the country, there was a widespread solidarity movement that arose to defend the Mohawks, and there was protests all across the country, occupations of government offices, occupations and shutting down of bridges, railway lines. There was sabotage, electrical pylons were downed, bridges were burned. So the government of Canada was facing an insurgency that was arising from this standoff, and this was the main contributing factor, of course.
That's not what I wanted to do. Just wanted to pause that to say, reminder, this was all because some rich white people wanted to pave over one of their grave sites with a golf course.
That limited the military violence by the government. And the 77-day siege ended when the armed Mohawks burned their weapons and walked out of the final area that they had been contained in. But they refused to surrender, and they got into clashes with the military and the police as they tried to enter this area. But that was the ending of the 77-day siege. Something like 30 or 40 of these people were later acquitted on the grounds of self-defense in court. And the golf course and the condominium project were never expanded. So the Mohawks were victorious. And not only were they victorious in their local struggle, but they helped inspire Indigenous resistance and set the tone for Indigenous resistance throughout the rest of the decade of the 1990s and even up to this day.
So pretty neat. And you might have saw his name being flashed up on the screen there. But it turns out he's the author of this comic book, the 500 Years of Resistance comic book. So, letter hack, if you're lurking, or I'll let you know afterwards, this might be an interesting comic book to get into. I'm actually very interested in looking it up and seeing if I can get it. So this book description, the 500 Years of Resistance comic book is a powerful and historically accurate graphic portrayal of Indigenous resistance to the European colonization of the Americas, beginning with the Spanish invasion under Christopher Columbus and ending with the Six Nations land reclamation in Ontario in 2006. Gord Hill spent 2 years unearthing images and researching historical information to create the 500 Years of Resistance comic book, which presents the story of Aboriginal resistance in far-reaching format. Sounds like a very interesting comic book that I really kind of want to get my hands on. Looney Tunes, yeah. Letterhack is probably about, he starts his stream usually around 8, so I'll let him know about this later, but I'm going to see if I can track down a copy, because I'm very curious in it and would like one. So just some more images from that event and people making comments. Hearing news Canada's former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney is dead. He will never be remembered by Indigenous people, as he will forever be remembered by Indigenous people as the monster who was Prime Minister when Canada deployed the largest military force ever to confront Indigenous people in the history of North America. For some of us Indigenous people who lived through the 1990, the Oka crisis created a wound on our souls that never healed. It created a fear that Canada would again one day deploy its military against Indigenous people. If the Canadian Army massacred the Mohawks during the Oka crisis of 1990, it would not have ended the crisis. Oka affected every Indigenous person alive back in 1990. There were Indigenous protests across Canada, even Indigenous people as far as south as Mexico went to Oka. The Indigenous warriors who defended the Mohawk Nation in 1990, some came from other Indigenous nations like Mi'kmaq Nation. The Mohawk Warrior Society wasn't the only Indigenous warrior society to take up arms in 1990. The Long Fighter Society, led by Born with Tooth, also took up arms and diverted the Old Man River in the Canadian province of Alberta. Some settlers, white Canadians, don't realize is Oka could have happened anywhere in Canada, and it can and most likely will happen again. And that sort of thing, like I said, with what's happening with Wet'suwet'en, it is still happening, this type of thing. So Canada deployed twice the number of soldiers against the Mohawk Nation in 1990 than it did against the Taliban in Afghanistan. Just some very, very intense pictures. And then we have this. Beginning tomorrow, we, the NDP, are calling on Parliament to take a clear stand for a permanent ceasefire. Huh? Wait, this tweet seems out of place. I have already talked about Gaza, and this is about reinstating funding to UNRWA and to ask for a permanent ceasefire, for arms embargo on Israel, for recognition of the state of Palestine. It's time for Canada to be on the side of peace and justice. Wait, this seems so out of place, this tweet. It shouldn't be part of this docket, should it? We'll see. So the NDP, again, Nikki Ashton, when it comes to what's happening over in Gaza, outspoken, really good. And, you know, we definitely need to be doing this in Parliament. The debate on the motion will begin tomorrow. Oh. Update. The debate of our motion has been moved to Monday, March 18th, because Parliament will be cancelled tomorrow due to the death of former PM Mulroney. So we have 2 weeks to call on Liberal, Conservatives, and Bloc MPs to vote for peace and justice instead of complicity and genocide. So to honor this former Prime Minister, they're going to put off any progress on what's happening and what Canada is doing towards, you know, Gaza and the Palestinians. So his memory and legacy lives on, I guess. To put off Parliament was such an atrocity happening because such a horrible person happened to die. Ugh. Ah! Ah! Just So those were the main stories that I wanted to get through today, and it looks like I got through them. There's a whole bunch of other little stories I wanted to get through, but I'll save those for Friday. I'll do another day of odds and ends and all the trends to cover smaller stories that I kind of want to go over. So let's check what's happening in the Sandbox. Trevor saying Mulroney was an arsehole. Yes. Sorry, got a bit of a cough there. Vanessa saying, just like Elon naming a brown woman director of Twitter relations so that she can take the fall of Elon's failed Twitter changes. Yeah, it's the same thing. It happens all the time. And that's how Canada got their only female prime minister, was because it was a glass cliff. They knew that they were not going to get into power again. And so they just put a woman in charge to be the figurehead when that happened. Vanessa saying, and then the bitch-ass snowflakes of the conservative truckers, mostly owners, complained that they were removed by the military for blocking and attacking residents and depriving them of sleep. Yes, they... What happened in Ottawa was an absolute outrage that was allowed to go on that long. And just how indignant all of the protesters there were when there was any pushback whatsoever. But here we have a peaceful protest trying to protect a burial site from being paved over by a golf course. And suddenly it's like, send in the military! We must destroy them! Ah! Angela, hey Sandy, this past week of MR reminded me that I should have you on alert. I remember after your call in yesterday. Why, thank you. Yes, I called in. Still, I can't get over how nervous I get during those calls. It is. I hate calling in. I do much better over video when I can actually see people because I can't see the reactions. And then I was kind of really unnerved by how long I was able to just talk without being interrupted. I was expecting to be interrupted at some point or to have somebody interject with something, and then that never happened, and so that was kind of throwing me off, believe it or not. Yes, don't forget to like this stream. It's almost over. The live stream's almost over. I covered the main stories I wanted to cover. There's still so much more to go over. But like I said, I was kind of like on a mini break to get some other things done. I'm working on a video essay about Anna Kasparian because I wanted to cover part of her appearance on the PPD podcast when she was talking about trans people and the use of the word birthing person and all that sort of stuff. And then that video has just started to morph into something a lot bigger than just that. So, yeah. Angela saying David A. Robertson also is a great Indigenous graphic artist. I'll have to check him out. Oh, yeah. So let's just see if there was anything. If I yeah, I think all of that can wait. So I managed to basically cover two things, but spend like 2 hours doing that. Oh well. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, hit the like button. If you didn't, please still hit the like button so that I can continue working to improve. The letter hack, everyone can go check him out after this. The next live show will be at 6 p.m. on Friday, barring any unforeseen circumstances, but I am totally planning on doing one on Friday. Any help with Frodo's vet bills would be greatly appreciated. He has kidney disease, so he has to be on medication and specialized food. Fortunately, though, he has been eating a fair bit recently, and he's put on a little bit of weight, which... There, let's do this. About a week ago or so, I was playing with the laser pointer with all three of my little babies. So there's Frodo here. This is Frodo. And then I just got the babies last August, Abernathy and Lanier. And I was playing with his laser pointer, and Frodo just goes insane over it and was bouncing all over the wall trying to get it and stuff. And I remember just having this absolute intense wave of gratitude wash over me. To be able to be there for that moment, to see him, to see all three of them playing together, being together, just having that because I nearly lost him in the fall. His health had taken such a bad dive. And I got the babies because I knew he wanted siblings, and like he doesn't cuddle with them or anything, but I can tell he loves them, and he does play with both of them from time to time. And I can tell that he really, really loves having them around and stuff. And so just knowing that he's been able to enjoy some of that time with his siblings and seeing them all happy together, just, yeah, an absolute unbelievable wave of gratitude just washed over me. I nearly just, like, here I am playing with the laser pointer at them, and I nearly broke down in tears because of it. Because Frodo is my world. He's about 16 now. He's been with me through so much, and we've never been apart, other than a week here or there when I've been out. But other than that, we've never been apart. And yeah, just those little moments. I really appreciate them whenever I can have them. And a lot of that was made possible because of the wonderful people in my audience, of all you guys, because he had his first big health scare in the fall, or in the summer, and then again in the fall. And it was because of everyone in this very supportive community to help me pay off the big vet bills that has kept him in my life as long as he has been. And for that, I am just so incredibly grateful for this wonderful community that we're building up here. But his health issues will be ongoing until he does eventually pass. So any help with his vet bills and stuff would be greatly appreciated. You can do that by PayPal, linked in the description box below, or if you're Canadian, you can send an e-transfer to SandeeLovas@gmail.com. Let's see. Yep, got all these. You can check out my art at SandeeLovas.com. Soon the new pictures that I've done will be added to the website, and hopefully I can start working on the next art projects. This was the last drawing I did of Dan from the internet. I already know what I want the next subjects to be for my artwork, so I just need to get working on that. Nobody famous, anybody would know, just a friend of mine from a long time ago that I have a picture of I want to draw. So, also, if you can, please support my content by becoming a patron, linked in the description box below. Every little bit helps. Thank you to the people who have just signed on. Thank you to the Majority Report for shouting me out last week and then also taking my call. It helped boost my numbers a little bit on my channel. And I just super appreciate being part of their community, and having some level of name recognition with them is great. All the people watching, all the fabulous mods, keeping the sandbox clean of turds. Yeah, and I'm most likely on Twitter at any given time still. I'm on there all the time. That's usually where I'll put announcements and stuff, and yeah, I'll be chopping this up and all this sort of stuff, and yeah, keeping busy. But you guys rock. Thank you so much for coming out, and yeah, everyone, go over, check out the letter hack. And until Friday, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.